have a good 70 unread emails, which is not bad.
All right.
Okay. Well, thanks for coming, guys. This is our Getting Started with Your iPhone Tech Talk. We usually do these about once every couple of months, I think. Jamie's been a couple at this point. Bob's been one or two. And what we used to do is we used to have just two, kind of getting started and going further. Kind of how I built it off of my experience with Apple. But the more and more we did them, we realized we really need three. We need to have, your getting started, which is your basics. We covered mainly settings in this one. We talked about making calls with FaceTime and things like that. But then we have two more for the more advanced items that you can do with your iPhone. So that's what we really want to focus on today. And I know just about everybody has an iPhone except for Bob.
Wait till the price comes in.
You've been saying that for 9 months now.
I was going to say, well, you keep waiting.
But just think of how intelligent he'll be about his telephone when
He'll be able to do more than I can at that point.
you can't borrow mine. Did you go over to the new operating system that's coming out last week?
We did, yes.
It's stormed right next time.
No, I understand, and we were hoping to record that one, but somebody stole the camera. But we'll probably touch base on it again in a couple of weeks, especially since there's been a lot of developing items about iOS 8.
I think when the church takes it, it's not called stealing.
It's borrowing. God needed it. So, so anyway, before we jump into settings, I did want to talk about one thing because I've had a couple people this week call me and they cannot get their phones to ring. And my first thought was what it turned out to be, which is Control Center. So Control Center is part of the iPhone now with iOS 7 and the iPad, and it's fantastic because it gives you quick access to some major settings, but it can also be pretty detrimental. So if you slide up from the bottom of your phone, you get this guy right here. And what this is like I said, it's called Control Center, and it is a great way to pull up tons of quick access items that you usually deal with on your phone. But if you ever see this lit up, where it's white, kind of like my Wi-Fi and my lock here, that means that you are in Do Not Disturb mode. So if you ever miss tons of phone calls and you never hear it, regardless of whether your vibrate switch is on or off, that's why. Because Do Not Disturb mode will make it so that your screen doesn't turn on and you do not get sound notifying you that something is happening. So I had a couple of clients that had that problem, and swung by and checked it out, and that's exactly what it is. So that's one of the main things you want to avoid kind of running into with Control Center's Do Not Disturb. Since we're already here, we will definitely talk about it. Like I said, this is kind of a quick access to all of your different functions on the phone. Let's turn this back on here. And let's see.
Aww.
It's one of my cats. Katie sent me a picture today. And really quick, I'm going to break them down. Airplane mode, that's another one you want to avoid, making sure it's on. You only ever want to turn that on if you're about to go on a plane, or if you're about to go to an area where it's sensitive. Like if you go into OR now or Y12 for some reason, they always tell you to turn that on.
What is airplane mode?
Airplane mode means that it blocks any signal from coming in or out. So Bluetooth, Wi-Fi, cellular. So if your airplane mode is on, you'll never receive an email, you'll never receive a phone call or a text or anything like that. So always make sure that that is off unless you have a specific purpose for it.
But it doesn't, and also if you go into meetings.
Yeah,
I do it.
that's where you may want to do Not Disturb if you're in
I don't know
meetings,
which
or
one that is.
Do Not Disturb is the move. That's the one we just talked about.
Oh, but I can do that because if I'm going to flip for air, I'll do.
Or you can just sit on the side.
Or you can turn it on vibrate. Yeah. So that's that's the other thing you can do. That's what I do with all mine. Like when I'm about to go into a staff meeting, I just put my phone on there. That
When
way,
it vibrates, it still makes noise.
a little bit. Yeah. You can turn the vibrate off too, but
Okay.
in general, those are the three options: either turn the vibrate switch,
I'll go with the afternoon.
Do Not Disturb, or airplane mode. The next one over is Wi-Fi. You always want that on, because Wi-Fi does drain your battery, but very, very little. The reason you want it on is because if you have Verizon, AT&T, or anybody but Sprint, you have a limited amount of data that you can use per month. And what this does is whenever you go into a place that has public Wi-Fi, or if you go back home where you've already saved your password and everything like that, it's going to jump on that network so that you're not using your data. For example, I've got my Wi-Fi bar right here telling me that I'm on our net, because I'm able to do this. And as soon as I get home, I jump on my home Wi-Fi. When I go to Panera, it asks me if I want to join Panera Wi-Fi so that I'm not using my data. I have a Sprint, so I don't really have to worry about it, but Wi-Fi in general is going to be much cheaper, because you don't pay for it unless you're at an airport.
How secure is it?
Well, that's where you kind of have to be, if I'm on Panera, I'm not going to do any of my banking or anything like that. And phones are completely different from computers, and even with computers, there's a lot of fear, uncertainty, and doubt that's kind of spread across the media. I mean, you always want to be careful, but if you're, if I'm at Panera, I'm never going to do banking on any of my devices. But I'll definitely check CNN or Irish Times or whatever through that, because I don't have to worry about anything. I mean, there's always the potential that somebody can potentially get into your system, whether you're on Wi-Fi or not. So there's always that fear that Fox News and CNN and all those guys like to but in general, the percentile that actually happening is slim to none. If you just use basic common sense, don't do banking at Panera, don't send tons of personal photos to people from Panera or something like that, you're absolutely fine.
Question about Wi-Fi. I find airport, different places,
Mm-hmm.
it's so incredibly slow that I just switch.
So that is the one exception. Yeah, airports are the
torture.
one exception where I would say use your data on your phone if you have the data to spare, because in general it's going to be a lot faster
Oh
than
my
what
God, it's so
airport
slow,
Wi-Fi.
it's like,
Yeah, it's like dial-up speeds.
Yeah.
And that's because you've got, a couple routers spread throughout the airport, shared by thousands of people. Yeah, the mall does it. Mall actually isn't too bad for data, for
some
speeds.
malls, but just.
Yeah, the one over here, yeah. But in general, moving on when you can. This one next to it though, Bluetooth, I've seen that on a lot of people's phones who've never even had or heard of a Bluetooth device before. So that's the one, like, for example, Bluetooth is wireless headsets. Some cars now have Bluetooth. Tons of wireless devices can use Bluetooth. They've got docks that will allow you to send your audio signals over wirelessly. So that's what Bluetooth is used for, but it does drain your battery a lot. So, for example, if I'm here and I forget to leave it off, or if I forget to turn it off, I'll get down to 20% within the first few hours of being at the shop.
Is that the only place that you can cut it off?
No, you can also do settings, which we'll talk about here in a second. But this is the control center is nice because you don't even have to go into settings. It's all available straight through the slide up here. And so, again, make sure that's off. Talk about do not disturb. The lock next to it is your screen orientation lock. What that does is, so right now, if I'm in, let's say I'm in mail, normally if I rotate my phone, it'll rotate up here as well. But I have the orientation lock on, which means that I can turn this any which way I want, and it's not going to rotate at all. The iPad does the same thing, so if you like holding it vertically or if you like holding it horizontally, especially if you like to read in bed on the side or anything like that, it'll keep that from turning when you're wanting it to. So that is what that is for. And then going back in here, you've got brightness right below that, and what that's going to do is obviously just going to allow you to move your brightness on your screen to your desired effect. It will not reflect up here, like many things with AirPlay. Does not change my TV, unfortunately. But on your phone, it will actually change the brightness there. Below that, you've got your media center. So the last thing that I have is iTunes Radio. But if you had Pandora or anything like that, that's where you would get the play or the next icon right there, your volume right below it. And then the star may or may not be there. That depends on what you're doing. The reason I have a star there is because it's iTunes Radio, and that allows me to go through here and tell it to play more, never play this, or add to iTunes wish list. We'll get back to that in a little bit. And then the next ones below that are, and if you ever have that happen, just slide Control Center back up and pause. Or you can close the app. Let's see.
How do I turn it off?
Okay, so just the pause button. Just like that.
No, but go on, I didn't know I had anything. Okay.
If you hit play and there's nothing on there, it will play iTunes by default. So just be aware of that if you're in a meeting. And this is the quick way to pull it up. The ones below that are, well, first talk about the clock bar because that's more useful to everybody. You've got your flashlight on the left. To the right of that, you have your clock icon, which will take you into the clock app where you can set alarms, do stopwatch, see world clocks around the world. So I've got one for Colorado, I've got one for Ireland, and I've got one for and then you've got the calculator next to that. So it'll take you directly into the calculator app. And then the one below that, or to the right of that, is going to be direct access to your camera. No matter where you are in the iPhone, this is probably one of the best parts about Control Center. You can even be on your lock screen and you can access your camera and start taking photos. You know, because obviously life doesn't stand still. You know, it's not like you can save this moment in time if you like. Hold on, give me a second. Let me get my camera out and then I'll take the picture. This allows you to just slide up and take a picture. And you can also, like I said, do it from the lock screen, which is this right here. Slide up from the bottom right.
So you don't have to go through putting your code.
You don't have to go in through putting your code in at all. It takes you directly into the camera app through the lock screen. You don't put a code, you don't even have to open up the rest of the Control Center. Just primarily that little camera icon. So these are going to be different. You guys will not see the Apple TV simply because you're not on the Neighborhood Nerds private network. This will only ever show up, for example, if you're at home and you have your own Apple TV, it'll then show up on Control Center. Otherwise, it won't. But this allows me to jump to any of our Apple TVs that we have in the office. So we have two. We've got one there and one in here. And that allows me to do what I'm doing right now, which is AirPlay. So I can wirelessly have everything from here show up on the TV. The one next to that is kind of pointless. I know if you, Bob's heard me say this same rant a couple times. It's pointless right now, but with iOS 8 and Yosemite, the new Mac operating system, it is going to get better. But AirDrop, what it is now is it's a way to transfer files or items from your phone to another person's iPad or iPhone. But the limitation is they have to be on Bluetooth, which means they have to be within 30 feet. And it doesn't really, I mean, it's no different right now than sending a text or sending an email with that picture or with that document or with that whatever you're trying to send. So right now it's kind of pointless. Even worse is that it only works with an iPhone 5 or newer or an iPad 3 or newer. So there's a lot of iPhones and iPads that are completely neglected with AirDrop. So it's kind of pointless right now. I would say it's going to change a lot of that because they're going to expand who it can talk to, how it talks. So you can actually, you know, say you're in Baghdad for some reason, and I'm here. I can send you a file with iOS 8. Right now we can't, but that'll be one of those things that AirDrop can do in the future. So it's kind of pointless now, but it will get better. It was one of those things like Game Center that Apple tried and nobody really liked it. So let's talk about settings here really quick. Like I said, that's one of the huge meat of this Tech Talk. Again, we kind of went through these top three with Control Center, but this is another place to find them. It's just within the settings app, just like on your iPad, Bob. You just go in here, you can turn the flip on for airplane mode, same thing with Bluetooth and Wi-Fi.
I just turned my Bluetooth off on the other and on this one.
You may have accidentally tapped it again. That will happen. That's the kind of problem.
So how do I go back there?
So you can either, nope, you can turn it off through settings or through Control Center while we're even in settings. So if I turn my Bluetooth off or on, you see how it automatically reflects here? The only time it's going to turn itself on or off is if you accidentally press it.
off here, right?
Let's see here really quick. It's showing off there too on Bluetooth.
Okay.
It may have taken a second to reflect there. That's fine. And then the one below that is cellular. And this is important for a few people, mainly because it will allow you to see how much data you're currently using. So I'm using 4.8 gigs right now thus far. And then it'll also show you what apps are using data. So if you are on a tiered data plan, and like say you're on the 250 megabytes of AT&T, that's really, really small. And these will add up quickly. So this is a great place to check kind of what your data usage is right now. Definitely enable LTE if it's off, or it shouldn't be off, but what that's going to do is it's going to give you much, much faster speeds than what you get with 3G. It does drain your battery a little bit, but Apple they've already set aside battery power for specific options like LTE and things like that. So don't worry about it draining what you're used to, because it's already been accounted for. Then if we go back here, we're going to see a couple other things. In the first section here, do not disturb, again, we talked about that briefly. Control center, we also talked about that, but here's where you can actually customize it a little bit. I leave both of these on. One of them is access on the lock screen, and another is access within apps. The reason I leave those on is because, let's say I'm in settings, I can still pull up my control center. Or let's say I'm on the lock screen and I just need to see what time it is in Colorado before I call my dad or something like that. I can pull it up from the lock screen, all that kind of stuff. So I'll leave both of those on just for ease of use. Makes things a little bit easier, definitely quicker. And then if we go back here to Notification Center, Notification Center is something we'll talk about in the next Tech Talk. Really, right now it's gotten better, but it's still kind of limited in the sense that it's designed to be this one spot where you can check all of your news or all of your missed items from today. So if I go in here.
How do you do that screen?
So to get to this screen, to Notification Center, you drag from the top down. And this will pull, for example, today, gives us the date, gives us the weather, gives us my calendar, gives us my reminders for the next couple hours, and then mine has stocks on it, as well as a little preview of tomorrow.
But you have, you said gave you the weather. And where does it has to be getting weather from some source?
It's getting it from Yahoo Weather.
From where?
Yahoo.
Okay. Yeah. Gotcha.
And this is something that people have been ragging on Apple for a long time, because Yahoo isn't really the best source for weather. So finally, an iOS 8 weather channel is going to be the default weather support for Apple. So all these reports and everything, because if we scroll down the bottom, Yahoo is weather and stock is provided by.
So they know to walk onto that location you're in.
Correct. That's good. Yeah, and we'll talk about how here in a second.
Okay. Yeah.
That's location services. But again, we'll talk more about Notification Center next time. But what a lot of this can do is you can customize it to what you want to show up there. So let's say you have some bank apps, or you have, like, a lot of people do their stock stuff through Bank of America. You can actually have Bank of America show up on your Notification Center. I can have USA show up on my Notification Center, Apple Store if there's a new product that comes out, anything like that. So any app that has Notification Center support can show up in that drop down, and it's actually it does work pretty well. There's just some limitations in terms of how it organizes all those elements in there that I have a problem with, but that's something they're also working on for iOS 8. So moving on into general.
Question on that notification, I'm just looking so like I have Facebook notification turned off, so that means I don't get all every time somebody.
Correct.
That's how you turn that off?
So Notification Center is two things. It's dealing with that little drop down, but it's also dealing with the banners and alerts that pop up on screen. So I also have my Facebook off, because otherwise, every time somebody has a birthday, or every time somebody updates a status, you would get an annoying pop-up on your screen, and then that would tell you, or that would take up whatever you're doing. So it does also control those alerts that pop up. And we'll definitely talk about all that stuff in depth on the next one. But really quick, what Keith was talking about was, let's say we go down to, so messages is a great one. So messages, I have my notifications on where I have my messages obviously pop up on the top of the screen, and I have they're called banners, and then I have an alert sound set up for any time there's a notification for that. And then
so what the alert sound is that anytime you receive a text?
Correct. So this
How
kind
did
of.
you get that?
So if you go back in your Notification Center,
Okay.
scroll down to a specific app, in this case messages,
Okay.
and then you can change your alert sound here.
Is that like the because I can't ever hear my messages from them.
Okay, well, we can discuss the
Okay.
specific sound and volume and everything
Okay.
on that after. Because we will be coming back to this in depth, like I said, on the next Tech Talk, because it does require a lot of time to talk about what you can do. But if we go back to the general here, we're going to get a lot of different options that are really important, especially for software. Because within general, you've got your software update. Anytime you see a number badge on your settings or on your settings app, that tells you that you have a software update that you need to download, or that Apple wants you to download. And that's where you do it. It's right through here. The cool thing is now, as long as you're connected to Wi-Fi and plugged in, it will download that for you once you tell it to download. You don't have to plug into computers anymore.
When you do each tab,
Yeah, so I can tap on software update, and if there were an update, it would tell me, 7.1.1 is out, here's the download size, download and install, tap on that button, and then straight through there. And the one above it is also really important because this tells you how much space you have available. And it also gives you a few more tidbits about your phone that's really important. This is where you can change the name of your phone.
Is that about?
That's about, yep, right above software update. You can change the name of your phone. It will tell you what version of the operating system you're on, your serial number in case you ever need to go to Apple or you need us to go to Apple for you. That's where you can pull that up so we can pull everything up. This is all carrier specific stuff right here. But back up here, if I go to capacity, I've got technically a 16 gig phone, but you don't ever get the full 16 gigs because of how much is saved for the operating system and a few other things. But I have 3.3 gigs available still. So that's another thing another way to check how much space you have left on your phone. I know people who take a lot of photos, it's typically one of the things they run into all the time is running out of space. That's how you find out how.
So how much do you need to have available to make it? I get notifications occasionally, you're getting low on.
Are you low on iCloud space or iPhone space?
Okay, 2.3 gigabytes available.
Then you're fine. You may be running out of the free iCloud space, and that's where you may or may not even need to look at that. Because the thing about iCloud space right now is that, and Apple does a horrible job about it, educating people, is that it does not add any space to your phone. So if it's telling you you're running out of space, it's simply saying you're running out of space for backups and things like that through iCloud. If it's telling you you're running out of space on your actual phone, that's when you can no longer download apps, you can no longer download photos and music and movies and things like that.
That's what I was, and I had to get rid of some apps.
Okay. Yeah.
if you're gonna take a lot of photos, would it be better when you bought the phone to upgrade to like the
32 or 64, absolutely. I will tell you, I've had 2 Palms, 2 Blackberries, one Blackberry, 2 Androids, and Nokia, and then I've had 2 iPhones. At this point, I'm running out of space.
Yeah.
Even though I have 3.3 gigs available, I need to clear a lot of stuff out here. And I definitely say at least go for the 32 gig if you're going to be taking photos, because now Katie and I take photos all the time, and I'm running out of space.
See, I think it's what I did into.
Yeah.
Or you're gonna get busy and delete, which I may work.
Yeah, exactly. You have to take
Get
time.
home at night, so that I can get rid of these.
You're tired, you don't feel like.
I'm gonna take 4 of the same, yes.
Yeah,
If you
exactly.
just want to delete the 3, yeah, I did that happen a couple of weeks ago.
So that's definitely where you want to check that. But yeah, 32 gig, absolutely. If you're going to be taking a lot of those, that is, honestly, I don't know why 16 gigs is still the base. At this point in time and technology, 32 gigs is so cheap. There's no excuse for Apple or any of the other, Sony, Samsung, any of those guys to make 16 gig phones. It's just.
I'm so sorry, so sorry.
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 Good song. But yeah, 32 gigs is the way to go. Siri, if we tap in there, we've got a couple options. This is one of the cool things where you can change the language, the voice, anything like that. So if you do speak another language, it will actually start understanding what you're saying if you switch it to that respective language. And the My Info is really important because when you say things like, call my wife, or call my work, or give me directions to my house, it's pulling from this contact card. So whatever that says, you always want it set to you, because that way those commands actually work. The one on the bottom is raise to speak. I don't like that one because what it does is if you raise your phone or your iPad to your face like this, it will start automatically turning on Siri. I don't really ever use my phone like that, so it doesn't really make sense, and it's so much easier just to hold the home button to pull up Siri that way.
Is Siri working out pretty good for you?
Oh, absolutely. I mean, I've shown it off for you guys many times. You know, it's extremely accurate. Where is the nearest auto station? Who talks like that? So, yeah, okay.
We're in Virginia, that's 9 hours away.
Where's the nearest gas station?
I found 15 gas stations fairly close to you.
I mean, it's fantastic. Okay.
Okay, now if you're driving down and it says 15 gas stations, and then I want to go from
Yeah,
here
so
to
check this
back.
out. So, where's the nearest gas station? Oh, no, let's do it. Where's the nearest restaurant?
Looking for restaurants.
Okay, so we're not going to do 5 acres because that would be
close to
cheap.
you. I've sorted with my distance.
So then all I'm going to do is tap on that, and then I get all this stuff. So I can get, you know, reviews, blah, blah, blah. But then
How's that?
I can tap on it to accept. It takes me directly to the maps app that you and I talked about earlier.
Right.
And then I tap on the car icon.
Where was the car? That's
It was right next to the pin. So,
okay.
and then I just hit start.
And it's just, okay, that's just what I couldn't figure out.
Heading north on Hillside.
So
Do you have to have it downloaded now?
Nope.
It's
It's
already.
it's already built into the
Siri.
phone.
Oh, man, I want to try that.
Just through Siri. Siri's fantastic. I mean, there are, you know, Microsoft's got their Cortana system now, Google's got Google Voice, and they all have pros and cons. And honestly, they're all fantastic. At this point in time, they all work great. I would say it's going to see Siri and dictation get some amazing boosts to it. I'm sure Google and Microsoft will have boosts to their systems too. So really, they're all fantastic. Compared to 2 or 3 years ago when they first launched, it's a completely different game. So I didn't use Siri at all for the first year that I had my 4S because it was cool. Now it's amazing. I mean, I can even say, what are the movie times today?
Let me check on that.
And it will pull up.
No,
What movie?
you,
Quite a number of movies playing today.
I can see any.
Far from Knoxville.
let's say you buy a new iPhone here in Knoxville.
Yes. Mhm.
And you have 3 English versions. You have the American, British, and Scottish. So
And Irish.
does Mr. and Mrs. iPhone and Siri, they know that you're,
You know where you are.
they know where you are, and they'll,
That's part of that. You see, if I go back to this part, you see English United States. If it were British or Scottish, you'd say UK.
and that's done automatically. You don't have to.
Well, this is technically done the moment you set up your phone. So
Okay.
when you first set up your phone, it asks you what language you want, and then it'll automatically set this from here. But let's say you're English, but you also speak Arabic, or you also speak Japanese. I can then change that language to Japanese or whatever.
As long as they have Appalachian.
So if you change it to
English,
English,
English, Australia, Canada, United Kingdom.
so if you put United Kingdom, it would speak. in-
So here we go. Let's do United Kingdom so I can show you what it's going to be. Siri, where's the next gas station right here? Oh, goodness. It's UK, so it doesn't technically cover Ireland, but we'll see. So hold on, let me talk British. Siri, where's the next gas station? I may actually have to change the entire phone. See, this is where it gets complicated because this is where there's still some limitations because we go into, where's that now? International. So this is where you also want these to usually coincide. So, for example, let me see what this. Because when you have your international language set, it's also designed for Siri to understand that accent. That's why there's not anywhere near the total amount of languages in here. But let's see what this says. Siri, where's the next gas station? So yeah, see, this is what's causing conflict, is because the normal language is different from Siri's language. But I bet you, if I change that, we go into general again. We go in general, international. And let's say we change that to. I'm going to restart my phone here. But from here, you should understand. Here's that. So I'm rebooting into, there we go, rebooting into Japanese. Boku no kage wa doko desu ka? So you can see it here, it's actually thinking, and I just asked it where are my keys, so I'm sure it's not going to understand or be able to pull it up. So it did. So she said, I do not know where your keys are, but I can help find somebody to help you. So let me go back in here and change my settings back to English. It was a fun one. We've done that one. Okay. So it's a little bit of a sidetrack there. So unfortunately, that is one of those limitations. I was hoping that it would still get it, but you have to have the language in general the same as series. So now that I'm back in English, let's go ahead and pop this back up here. Okay. Good afternoon. One second, yes, just want to set this. Alright, so we're back in settings here. Oh, let me, before I forget, let me change my Siri voice control back to English. Okay, so we're back in here. We talked about Siri. Spotlight search is actually, definitely leave all these on, and I'll tell you why. Spotlight is one of the best things on the iPhone. It's a technology they brought over from the Mac, and what it does is it searches for anything and everything on your phone. So let's say I was looking for Katie. For some reason I didn't know her contact information or anything like that. So I typed in Katie, and here's what's awesome.
Where did you do that?
Yep, so Spotlight is if you swipe about halfway down on the main home screen.
Oh, we're on. Oh, I'm on.
So you're so hit the home button really quick, and now swipe about halfway down. There you go. Yeah. Yeah. This everything we're talking about the comments. Yeah. So this is cool because I type in Katie. Here's what's great. It pulls up her birthday, our anniversary, pulls up her contact card right here. Oh, actually, it'll pull up her contact card. It'll pull up any song that has the word Katie in it. So I'm So Blue by Katie Thompson is in my music playlist. And it'll pull up my contact because she's labeled as my girlfriend in my contact card. And Siri does that for us. And then it'll show up any emails, any text that you send, anything that has Katie in it. So we've got thousands and thousands of emails.
So in the contact card, where do you
list somebody?
Label as?
Yeah. So the easiest way to do it is just to hold the home button to pull up Siri and say make such and such my whatever. So in this case, I said make Katie my girlfriend. So for example, I'll show you. It's going to tell me I'm done, but make Katie my girlfriend. It's going to say I already know that she's your girlfriend. So if it's the first time, it will put it in your contact card, or Myron, for example, you say, make Myron my husband.
So if you look at your contact card, does it visually,
Make Myron my husband.
So the one thing you have to keep in mind is that you have to start talking and you have to continue talking pretty consistently, because this little wave down here tells you when it's actually recording. And if there's a brief pause, or if somebody's talking and then stops and then you start talking, Siri cancels because it doesn't realize that it's one person.
So I should do that without pausing?
So you did it perfectly. So try it again.
All right.
So hold the home button again.
Make Myron my husband. Which Myron?
So you got two different contacts.
Oh, that's because ICE, somebody told me to put that in.
Mhm. So you'll tap on whichever is his main contact, which has his cell
that's
phone.
another thing, what is ICE? I don't know.
Do I know?
ICE,
Do you want me to remember that ICE is your husband? Yes.
Yeah. What did?
I had somebody do that to mine 2 years ago, and I
It's
was like,
like,
what is it?
Oh, it's for a case of emergency.
Oh, yeah.
ICE
I was like, I don't know
in
what
case
that
of
means.
emergency.
I don't
It's
know.
one of those people.
They said that's what police or paramedics,
Gotcha.
they look up the ICE.
Gotcha.
I think it's been in your phone.
Well, and that's kind of something we talked about in last week's iOS 8. That won't even matter, because with Health Kit, it already gives you an emergency card available through the lock screen. So soon you won't have to label anybody as ICE. It'll just automatically know when you slide up that's the contact. So that's
Oh,
fine.
you were showing me, going to show me what it
Yes,
looks like.
what it looks like.
Contact.
So
So
if
now
you're
I
going,
just clicked to go out of it, so they've already made
yeah,
it.
so they've already made it, so you can just click the home button and get out of Siri. So if I
That's
go
just on the
into
door.
mine, so this is mine, and then I've got everybody. I've got my grandma, my dad, my brother, my girlfriend twice
So is
apparently.
that, do you do it under notes, if you're gonna manually?
No, this is
do it?
not under, well, no, there's actually a specific spot. The thing, and this is where there's a limitation. You have to create the first relationship through Siri, because it will not show you,
Maitland Fair, my
it
daughter.
will not show you the actual contact portion through there. So I can do add related name, but only after I create through Siri. It's just easier to do in Siri here. So,
Okay, so that's, I would have never seen it when I was
exactly. Yeah.
doing contact.
You have to use Siri for the first one at the very least. And then it gives you that add related name blocked through related, or through edit.
Cool.
But again, it's just easier to do it through Siri because she'll just pull everything from that contact card anyway. So yeah, that is one of the cool things about Siri and Spotlight Search. So if we go back in here, this is another huge one for, I know a lot of people that love the iPhone. The screen is a little bit small sometimes, and text size is indeed adjustable straight through here. So we can actually change all the text size through the general settings, but we can also do something else in accessibility. If we go back here, we can change all text to be bold. So if your problem isn't necessarily the text size, but just how clear it is, if you bolden the text, it'll make everything pop out. So I think I have to reset my phone. Yeah, it's going to reset my phone.
Make Travis my son.
And when you do that, it does restart the phone. Same thing if you ever change your language, but it will also give you a few more options here in settings. So if we go back into settings here, see how much darker everything is. There's a lot more contrast to that. And the letters themselves are a little bit thicker. So we're going to go back into accessibility here and see some of these other options. Increased contrast, reduced motion, all these are built around if you have seeing impairments. The idea with the increased contrast is that it just makes things pop out a little bit more. Reduced motion is going to get rid of any of the parallax effects that they have with the new iOS. So it's just going to kind of make everything seem a little bit flatter. Turn it off here. Good. And then you've got tons of different hearing options too. So, for example, if you have hearing aids and little sounds like ringers and text tones don't really, even at max volume, you still hear them. They've got the LED flash. So this guy right here, will flash and let you know that you've got an alert, as well as the screen will too. So then you can also change the balance of the audio volume from left to right, pretty much take care of any of your different accessibility problems with the iPhone.
What are subtitles?
Subtitles?
Oh,
that-
I'm hearing.
Yeah. So if we go back into general again, we've got a few more to cover with this specifically. The main one is usage. So this is another place to check how much space you have available, but it's also a fantastic place to see what apps are using the most space. So for example, my photos and my music are probably going to pop up there on the top. And so photos, I'm using a gig for photos. GarageBand, between the app and the projects that I've got, it's using about 720 megabytes, and so on and so forth. So this is a great place to check to see what's eating up the most space, kind of carrying the most dead weight, and then from there you can remove any of those. Background app refresh within general also is another major one. And this is something that's brand new for iOS 7. The idea is that within that multitasking view, which is where
Is this in general?
this is in general, yeah, right below usage. So if we go right here, background app refresh. And when I double tap the home button, this is what's called the multitasking view. And again, this is another one of those things we talk about next week. But anytime you have an app and you go to the home screen and you open another app, it doesn't really close the original app. And now with iOS 7, that background app refresh means that some apps can still continue using power and battery life in the background. And so sometimes, for example, I think I've got all mine on, but if you ever notice that your battery drains a lot, you may want to go through these and turn some of those off. For example, I have the weather on and it used battery power in the past.
What's the little arrow mean?
The arrow is meaning that it used it in the past, I think, hour.
Okay.
So, for example, I just checked the weather to see if I need to roll my windows before you guys showed up. And then I checked Facebook and Google Maps, and it tells me that I did. But all those are still open in the background, so I haven't closed them. So that's one thing to keep in mind.
And how do you go in?
So if you go into the background app refresh itself, and you just go through and turn the ones you want off. So for example, I could probably turn off Scramble. I can probably turn off Socks since I don't have any Socks, I haven't checked it. And then I could probably turn off YouTube because I don't know why that would be on in the background anyway. And that's just a way to itemize through and see what's really using the most power and what you can get rid of. So the next couple items we want to talk about are your auto lock your auto lock, and then when you go in there, you're going to get a couple different options. With the iPhone, it's different from the iPad. The iPad gives you a little bit more time between when it turns itself off. The idea is that with the auto lock on, you don't accidentally set this down and your battery drains and you're dead. You know, with this, mine is set so if I sit it down here, it's going to turn itself off in a minute. If I have the same thing on my iPad is set for 15 minutes. So if I set my iPad down, it's going to drain a little bit more battery, but the idea is that I still have battery on it because the screen and all the apps aren't on all the time. It's especially great for traveling or anything like that when you're not necessarily be near a power plug. I always recommend leaving some form of time on there, whether it's 5 minutes, which is the most you can do on the iPhone, or 1, simply because it'll also extend the life of your phone. Because if you have your screen on all the time and you constantly forget to turn it off, it will, you may not have a phone for 2 years before your contract renews. So that's one thing to keep in mind. Restrictions we don't really need to talk about for you guys for iPhone. That's something we talk about the iPad because the idea is that kids may be using the iPad, etc. But with the iPhone, that's kind of a different story. And I forgot they moved passcode out of here, so we're actually going to jump out here now to settings again. Kind of the big hierarchy, which if you see the little settings button on the top left of your screen, just tap that and it'll take you back here. And before we jump on to the next thing, we're going to touch on the passcode, which if you have a 5S, you're going to see Touch ID and passcode. If you don't, you're just going to see passcode. So if we tap on that, I'm going to put in my passcode really quick. Here's where, you guys probably won't see this, here's where you can add a passcode so that when you tap this and you slide to unlock, you can put in a 4-digit code. I definitely recommend everybody, especially on their phones, having one. Because that way, if you leave this at an airport or anything like that, nobody can get into your phone unless they happen to guess the 4-digit code. You can also make a more expanded code to be as long as you want it. but that's something we talked about later. With this, though, this will kind of prevent you from, if you ever leave at a gas station or a Kroger or anything like this, it'll kind of protect your data. If you have a 5S, one of the cool things is that they brought out Touch ID. And this is something that they're going to be putting in all of their phones from here on out. I very rarely have had to put in my 4-digit code because now I have programmed my phone to recognize my thumbprint. And my other thumbprint and my index finger and then Katie's thumbprint. So you can have up to 5 different fingerprints that you can use to unlock your phone.
How do you do that?
This is only if you have a 5S. Which, do you have a 5S?
I think I have 5.
You have yeah, you do not. You've got a 5, just a 5. So
You have a 5 what?
5S. You see how that only says passcode?
Uh-huh.
So if it says Touch ID and passcode, that's how you know you have a 5S.
Oh, okay, gotcha.
This is something that just came out last September when they released the 5S. All the new iPads this year and all the new iPhones will indeed have Touch ID as well. But definitely have your passcode on.
So where it says require passcode immediately, can you make it?
Yeah. So here's where you have a little bit of freedom. So I think, yeah. So require passcode immediately. On my phone, I also have it. So that way, if I set it down somewhere and somebody sees it and snags it, they can't automatically get in. If I set this to
5 minutes? See, mine gives me 1 minute.
So you get options because you don't have Touch ID. So I don't have that option at all. But you can set it to 5 minutes. I think for my iPad I have 15 minutes. And it makes sense for my iPad because it primarily stays at home. So what I do is, if I turn it off and I forget something, all I have to do is slide down lock. I don't have to put in my code at all. But on my phone, apparently if you have a 5S, you don't have a choice. But if you have an older phone, my phone, you can change that time frame. In general, I still say immediately is better for the iPhone, primarily because you're much more likely to set it down somewhere. And that way somebody can't do it.
Have you run into any problems where, like, sometimes on fingerprint, some people don't go through the prints?
Well, this is what's cool. So with the Touch ID, let me go back in here. I have 5 fingerprint options. And I'm sure they're probably going to add in here. Actually, I'm sorry, I don't have Katie's fingerprint in here. The first 2 are actually duplicates of my thumbprint, my right thumbprint. Because the idea is, in case it missed, the 16th over here, I can get it on the 7th. So what that does is it tells the phone that it's technically it's 2 different fingerprints, but it kind of makes an amalgamation of that first and second one, so that it says, hey, okay, this is clearly that guy. So you can set it so that you don't really run into that problem. Honestly, I've never really run into the problem, and we didn't have AC until today for a couple days because it went out. I was sweating like nobody's business, and it was still able to read my thumbprint. So it does a good job. It's nothing that I've run into. When it first came out, it definitely had a few issues, but with the past couple updates, it fixed most of the Touch ID, and that was mainly software, not anything with the hardware itself. So in general, I'd say you're fine. Wallpapers and brightness are next. Brightness we don't really need to cover because you can do that from anywhere with Control Center now. The wallpapers are cool because this is where you can actually make your phone more like your own phone. Because if we go in here to choose wallpaper, we've got tons of photos that Apple has provided for the phone through stills like these. And these are always expanding, they're always adding more of these. But then we can also add dynamic, and what these do is that these will actually move. For people with problems with motion, obviously don't use those, but you can still do your own as well. So for example, I've got this great backdrops app where I can change to any of these fantastic landscapes at whim, or if I wanted to be cute, I could put my fat cat on my lock screen. So it's where you can really personalize your phone. It gives you the option to set it as the home screen or the lock screen. That's why it shows 2 here. The home screen is just simulating what you're going to see with apps on top of it. The lock screen you're only ever going to see when you tap the lock button on your screen when it's asleep. So going into sounds, this is where Keith, we kind of talked a little bit about text tones, but this is where you kind of get a little bit broader perspective on all that kind of stuff. Because here, for example, Jane, you were talking about if you were in a meeting and you didn't want vibrate, you can actually change some of those settings through here. So when it's on vibrate, you can actually turn these two off. So, for example, if you never use vibrate, but you only use it for meetings, you can turn these two off so that you flip the switch, and then you don't hear or feel anything during a meeting. So that'll fix that problem that you were talking about earlier. So if I turn that off, you don't have to worry about airplane, or you don't have to worry about do not disturb. Because the only problem with do not disturb is if you forget to turn it back off, you're not going to get anything. Same thing with airplane mode. This will kind of fix that because you can turn these two settings off and then just flip that little orange switch.
Yeah.
So when you're in a meeting, it just goes completely silent, no vibration. From there, Keith, you get to really customize your entire phone for the sound that you want. So for example, my text tone is that little honk, the bamboo honk. And then my ringtone is that. You can create ringtones through GarageBand, you can download them through iTunes, or you can choose from the tons of different options that Apple themselves give you directly through that little selection there. And you've got all these different options. So you can customize what you hear when you get a new voicemail, when you get a new email, when you get a new tweet, if you use Twitter, you get a new Facebook post, any of that stuff. And then specific apps will also add themselves in here so that you can change what you hear when you get a notification from there. So, and keyboard clicks, if you are typing and you notice it sounds, you've got that really annoying keyboard click sound, this is where you go to turn them off. Some people like it, but because it kind of provides that tactile sound to go along with the touch. But
See, what's on? It's never recorded.
if you're on silent or vibrate, you're never going to hear that. Or if your volume is all the way down, you're never going to hear that. So that's where there's a lot of micromanaging with sound on the iPhone.
So does that mean they're on when it's green?
When it's green, it's on. So for example, we go down. Yep, you mind if I borrow your phone for a second? So I'm going to make sure your volume is up.
I actually just.
Yeah, it's definitely there. So
Okay, now, you know what?
if your
These
volume is
I had-
off,
I didn't have it. Whoa, I had these off.
oh, gotcha. Okay.
So you have to have
Yeah.
those on.
No. So what this is, this is so that if I flip this switch, I'm not going to hear the vibrate, or I'm not going to feel it. So
If it's set like that.
if these are off.
Okay.
If these are off, you're not going to get that vibrate. So if somebody calls you, you're not going to hear, feel, or see anything. That's where it's a little bit different.
Your timing is set menu on the tones. You can't record your dog barking.
Actually, you can.
Yes, you can.
You
Yeah.
can do all kinds.
You can.
There's a dog.
Yeah. All right, so really, just kind of cruising through here real quick. The other two things I really want to cover in settings, and we're going to get to those here in a second, on settings today, because a lot of this other stuff is going to tie into next week's. But privacy is the next one we really want to talk about. Because privacy is where you control location services and all the services that can access your phone if you give them permission. In general, always leave location services on. And I'll tell you why. Because Find My iPhone exists.
Yes.
So if I leave this, or if I forget where I put it in my house, but I don't know where it is, I can log into iCloud.com or use my Find My iPad app on my iPad or any other iOS device, and I can find this no matter where I'm at. Or let's say I lost it, I can lock it, I can erase it, and I can log into iCloud and find out where it last was. That's what I did. I left this at Kroger a month and a half ago. And it was in the cart, and I got home. Luckily, we live about 10 minutes away from Kroger. I got home, and I was looking for my phone. I blamed it on Katie. I feel so bad, but I couldn't find the phone. I logged into iCloud, found it. We called Kroger really quick. The cart guy went out and checked it out. set aside, but we were able to also lock the phone. So the only way that anybody could ever use it is if they knew my Apple ID password, which is so long I doubt anybody would.
So to log into, so I'll leave it somewhere and I come home where I can use her
Yeah.
iPhone
Or you can use your iMac at home, or your
or
iPad.
my iPad or what.
Mhm.
I was actually in Rome with my sister and my mother, and my sister left her phone on a tour bus and we found it in Rome.
That's amazing.
Between the three of us, we remembered how. But, so to go, say I'm with her and use her, but where do I go on an iPad?
So if you go to iCloud, you can
Okay, where do I go to iCloud?
just go to iCloud.com, sign in, and there's a button that looks like this that says Find My iPhone. If
So
you're on an iPhone or an iPad, you download this app called Find My iPhone. It's an app. It's actually an app. On
Right, I
the
have it on.
Okay, now where is it?
Where's the iCloud? That's what I don't know how to do.
Where do I find that?
Okay, hold on. Let's start back here. So this app, this is actually an app on the phone. Like I said, you have to have the Find My iPhone app that is not built in the system. You have to download it through the App Store. So if you go into the App Store, Janie,
I don't think I, oh, I do have it.
Yeah,
I
so
think
you
you
have-
must, you did that.
I probably did. So if you tap on that,
Or in another class.
I think we probably did, but if you tap on that and you open up, it'll require you to sign in with your Apple ID that's connected to all those devices,
Mm-hmm. And your password.
and your password, and then this is what you see.
Oh, maybe can I find my iPad on this
Yeah.
too?
Yeah,
I
it's
just found
online.
mine.
Which is at home or wherever.
Oh, it's right here.
Oh,
So, gee. So for example, I guess I'll go ahead and do it. I'm sure I'm gonna bug Leo. So here, when I tap on Actions, I can play sound, put it in lost mode, or erase the iPad. I'm gonna play a sound. You can hear it a little bit. Sorry, Leo. But that's how you find it in your house. The cool thing is, and it's kind of lame right now because I don't have a good example of this because my iMac is off, but I've got my iPad, my MacBook Air, and my iPhone all kind of laid on top of each other. But you'll notice it just says for Katie's MacBook Pro and my iMac, it just says offline. This is one of the only disadvantages to the Find My iPhone functionality, is that if the computer is not online, it can't find this. This is something they're changing with iOS 8.
It can't find.
Cannot find my computer. So
Oh.
it's at home. Let's say somebody steals it. They turn Wi-Fi off, I can never find it. That's one of the nice things about the new operating system that's coming out in iOS 8, is that it's going to ping the last known location. So whether I had this on yesterday or I had it on a year ago, it'll know that the last place it was on was at home. Or if somebody does steal that device,
They turn it
they
on.
turn it on. Exactly. Exactly. So that's going to change here in a little bit, but that is the best way, or that's the best reason to have location services on. Location services, though, is also nice for a few other apps, you know, like Fandango, which is a a movie tickets app. Apple Store is nice in that when you walk into an Apple Store, it knows you're there, especially if you have a G Smart appointment and you booked it with that same Apple ID, it will tell them, hey, such and such is in the building. Go ahead and check them in. But camera is also great because then whenever you take a picture, it saves that location in the metadata, which means that if I'm building a scrapbook later and I go into iPhoto, or if I go into my Photos app on the iPhone, I can say, hey, I was in Spain when I took this picture, or I was in Kyoto, or I was in Hiroshima, anything like that. And let's think, Leo was just saying, oh, backpack. But then some other apps use it for different things. Facebook, I leave that off, so I don't want anybody on my Facebook knowing where I am. It's kind of creepy. Compass is great for the, location services. I've got the Maps and Google Maps. Regal, so they, I know where the nearest Regal theater is. Safari, so I don't have to put in my location when I'm looking up the nearest Home Depot or Best Buy or anything like that. Siri, always leave it on because then that's how she knows what's near you. That's how she knows, where to find stuff around you. And there's just tons of other apps that will use that for different reasons. One thing to keep in mind is that if they use it a lot, it will drain your battery. So that's why you want to kind of itemize, what apps you're using. Definitely, with weather and weather channel, keep it on so you don't have to put in your address every time. it'll give you more accurate results because it's not just getting 37919, it's getting specifically where you are in 37919. So, let's see, let's cover. Yeah, and anytime an app requests any of your other apps, like for example, Facebook always asks you want to let them use your contacts. It's going to show up under the privacy tab. So you can go to contacts, for example, and right now the only two things that I let access my Google Contact or my contacts are Google Maps and AnyList. Same thing with calendars. It's just Apple Store. So that's when I make an appointment through that app. It'll put it automatically on my calendar. Photos and a few others will let you kind of tailor what you want to allow access to. And anytime an app asks if you want to give it access, it'll pop up in the middle of your screen with a big notification, and depending on what it is, allow or deny. So for example, Facebook, on photos I say allow, so that way I can send a photo from here over there. It's not going to automatically upload, but if it were my contacts, I said, no, I don't want you to have access to that because, you know, that stuff is more personal than what's on my Facebook anyway. Motion activity is another one. This is a new feature that's coming out, especially with iOS 8. They're building a lot of companies are building a lot of different things that kind of measure your steps taken and all that kind of stuff, and that's being built into HealthKit as well. So that will change. Facebook has its own option in here. So what this says is anytime specific application can pair with Facebook, it'll ask. So for example, the contacts, calendar, anything like that. From there, you itemize based on what you want. In general, I say give Facebook as little as possible because it will sell your information like nobody's business. But
So we need to turn off the Facebook then?
I have mine on just so that I can send photos from my phone to Facebook. But when it asks me if I want to give it my location or anything like that, I turn it off or say no. The last thing we want to talk about in settings really quick before we touch on the last really cool thing is iCloud. iCloud is great. This is going to change with iOS 8, but right now, the way it works and the way it should work is that everybody that has a phone in your family or an iPad should have their own Apple ID for iCloud. Because what happens a lot of times that I see is that, you know, a husband and a wife will share the same iCloud ID, and she says, well, or he says, I don't want their contacts. So they start deleting those contacts. The problem is it deletes it on the other system as well. So everybody should have their own iCloud ID. Apple IDs can be shared for the store purchases, but that's kind of a different beast altogether. And that's also going to be changing with iOS 8 because they're going to allow you to share purchases across multiple Apple IDs. But anyway, while we're in here, these are all the things right now that iCloud will sync between your phone, your iPad, or any of your Macs. These are mail accounts. If you have a iCloud mail account, which is either at Mac, at me, or at iCloud email account. Most people don't, and that's fine. I've just had this for so long, I mean, since 2007. It's just one of those given things. But then you have contacts, calendars, reminders, Safari bookmarks, notes, passbook cards, so anything that you bought, like plane tickets that you put in a passbook, those will pair between all your devices. Same thing with keychain, which is passwords that you've used in Safari. So if I go to Netflix.com and I don't want to type in my password every time, it asks, do you want to save this? Say yes. Then it shows up on here, but also on my iPad, my Mac, and my MacBook Air. Photos is a point of contention for Tommy and I because it does not work half the time. But the idea is that anytime you take a picture on here, it'll show up on your iPad and your Mac. Luckily, Apple has heard enough criticism of it that they are changing it completely when iOS 8 comes out, and we'll talk about that again in the future. But right now, it works sometime. If it doesn't, there's nothing you can do. It's just the way it is, unfortunately. This is my brother. And then documents and data is awesome because if you do a lot of keynotes on your iPad or your laptop or anything like that, you can make them on there and then show up on your iPhone as well, as long as you have a respective app. So let's say I have Keynote, which is what I usually do for our tech talks. I usually build a Keynote, and I have it synced up between my Mac and my iPhone automatically. So I don't have to send it to a specific email or anything like that. It shows up by itself. And then, of course, last but not least, on my iPhone on the bottom. Finally, if we scroll all the way down to the bottom, you're going to see storage and backup. If we click on that, this is where it's going to give you a couple of things right here. Right off the bat, it's going to tell you how much iCloud storage you have. If you ever get the notice that says, hey, you're running out of iCloud storage, buy more, this is how you can check that, and this is where you can see whether or not you need it. Because if we click on manage storage, for example, I'm only using 4 gigs, and here's why. It shows you your iPad, or the devices that are backing up. So right now it's my iPad, it's my iPhone, and then I've got all these apps that are currently using iCloud storage. In reality, it's not that much. I have 55 gigs because somehow I'm still on my Apple plan. I don't know how this is still going on. I have not. But even when it drops back down to normal, 5 gigs free, I'm still going to be totally fine. But storage plan is also changing with iOS 8 because right now it's ridiculously expensive to even get 50 gigs. With iCloud or iOS 8, they're going to expand the amount that you can have, but they're also dramatically reducing the price of storage. The only competitor that actually is going to have a better price is Google Drive. So that's a huge thing that because right now they're dead last. So it's going to be a nice jump. But the one below that is going to be the iCloud backup. This is extremely important if you rarely plug into your computer. I still do once a month, but in general, I have iCloud do all of my backups for me. Because what it's going to do is, when I get home and I plug in and I'm connected to Wi-Fi, it's going to automatically back up everything on my phone, just like your iPad or your Mac little time machine when you plug in an external hard drive. This is nice though, because just like your iPad, it's all wireless, it's all automatic. So you don't even have to do anything for it. So as long as you're connected to Wi-Fi and you're plugged in, it does it for you. I think, for example, mine was last backed up at 10:33 when I was sitting in that room, having my phone plugged into my power outlet, and it was doing its thing. So it's just automatic, it takes care of all this stuff for you. So before we get out of settings, we're running a wee bit over, but there's one last thing that I want to talk about today. So I realized that FaceTime is probably going to be pushed into next week, just like the original week, or the original iPad one was. But does anybody have any questions with settings?
What is keychain?
Keychain? Keychain is when, if you go to a website and you put in your username and password, it asks you, do you want to save this password? That's what goes into keychain. So if you save, like I said, if you save, let's say you go to Netflix.com and you save your username and password, if you have keychain on for iCloud, it's going to automatically send that to your Mac and your iPad. So if you have other devices, that's where it really comes in handy, because you don't have to keep putting those passwords. I do for mine. You know, it's really up to you. As long as you've got a passcode on your phone, everything like that, I think it's fine.
I had mine turned off.
Well, technically, yeah, you do have 2 devices now. Yeah, so it makes sense to leave it off if you don't have any other Apple devices. But if you have an iPad, yeah, say turn on.
So I go ahead and put in my password and then it'll.
Exactly. Yeah. So before we finish up today, before we move on to what I want to talk about really quick, does anybody ever have any problems with phone calls or messages, like sending texts, receiving texts, making phone calls, anything like that? Because that's one of the most basic, unique things about that phone. But a lot of times we kind of gloss over it because it's just one of those things that everybody does deal with. The one thing I want to talk about really quick with voicemail, if for some reason we've seen this.
I have a hard time with it retrieving.
You what now?
I have a hard time with voicemail, being able to listen.
To multiples at the same time? Or?
No, it's like I'm forever. I mean, it's hard. I see I have one, and then it's like.
So this is the one thing about voicemail. This is one of the few things on your iPhone that is still dictated by carriers. So one of the things that kind of sucks about voicemail is that if you see this message where it says cannot retrieve your visual voicemail, it's not a problem with your phone, it's a problem with the carrier. And a lot of times you're just doing system maintenance.
It's not that, it's just I don't know what button to push to get to here.
Okay. So if we tap on voicemail, it's going to give me all these options. So this button, the play button, that's
Now, of
what,
course, this time I did it perfect.
and that's what all, the universal play button will be, always be what you use
Where is it?
so if you go into voicemail, on the bottom right of your iPhone app, you were right there.
There, yeah, it's hard.
Voicemail, bottom right.
This bottom right?
Yep, bottom right.
Yeah, all right. That's right.
And then tap on any of these voicemails. So you tap on that one, it'll start playing automatically, or
It
you just
starts
have,
playing on that, of course.
or you just have to tap the
Don't
play
hear a
button.
thing.
It's probably because your volume's all the way down, or your
Volume's up, I'm dead. I wear earphones.
remember Ross for 1 second?
Huh? Yeah, I wear hearing aids.
And this is something else you'll notice. If you try to do multiple things with the, like if you try to delete multiple voicemails, it starts slowing down, and that's because it's still having to
I'm trying
ping.
to go in there and try and delete most of them.
So delete
Yeah, you hear it
messages-
directly through the earpiece. Through the earpiece. Do what now?
To delete these messages, I'll get so it's.
To delete them, you can either slide from right to left and hit delete.
Or can you delete all?
You cannot delete all. And the reason you can't is because, again, it's outside of Apple's hands. This is direct contact to your voicemail server through Sprint, through Verizon, anything like that. So when you go in here and delete it, it takes a second, and then it'll put it away. But if you try to delete multiples, that's when you start lagging, and that's because of the fact that it's having a bounce.
So when it says down at the bottom, deleted messages 71.
So that's where you want to click on that and hit clear all every once in a while, because that's still going to take up space on your voicemail. Yep.
Okay, well, what do I do with the 62 deleted messages?
So tap on that and hit clear all on the top right. So if we go to here, I'll kind of show you.
If it's important, call me back.
Yeah, so you can just tap on that, hit clear all, and it's going to clear it. So that kind of covers the voicemail aspect. With text, the one thing that I get a lot is, why do some texts show up as blue, others turn out as green? So blue is iMessage. iMessage is any text, quote unquote, sent from an Apple device. So if I send a message from my iPhone to Katie, because she's got all Apple stuff, it'll show up as blue. If I send a message to Tommy, it shows up as green because he's got an Android. So iMessage is Apple's proprietary system for sending messages. The nice thing is it's free. It's just part of your iPhone. So if I send a message to anybody who has an iPhone or Mac or an iPad, it will bring up as blue. If it's green, it's anybody outside that bubble. One of the cool things coming out with iOS 8, and we briefly touched on it last week, is that iOS 8 is going to allow your computer, your Mac computer, or your iPad to send and receive any text, whether it's Android, whether it's Apple, anything like that, and make calls. So again, we'll talk about all those cool stuff.
We talked about that last week.
We did indeed. We did
It
indeed.
was so over my head. I'm gonna come back.
So the last thing that I want to leave you with is something really close to my heart, which is music. And I know some of us have talked about iTunes Radio and iTunes in general before, but the music app now is really cool because it's where you store all your music from your computer that you buy from iTunes, any of those places. And it's actually organized pretty horribly now because now you can't break it down by album. Once you go into an artist, you used to be able to say, let's say I went to the Beatles, I used to be able to go to every single album individually. Now it only gives you the full thing. But glossing over that, because that's going to change with iOS 8 as well. iTunes Radio is one of those things that's really cool because it's built. So iTunes Radio, if you go into music, you see that little radio button on the bottom left. So music on your phone is going to be this one. Where did you put your music in? So remember, this is where we use what we learned earlier.
Does it come with it, or do you have to download it?
Music comes with your iPhone. Okay.
Oh, I see.
Remember, if we can't find something, we pull up Spotlight.
Sir.
So if we can search for music, right there, pulls directly into there, bam. But if you tap on radio on the bottom left, this is where you can really kind of get some cool stuff from music, because I've got a Depeche Mode radio station, which is a group from the 80s. I've got an Andrew Sisters, which is a really old group. from the 40s and 50s. I've got a jazz, all kinds of different stations. But
Where do you get the stations?
so yeah, so you see where it says new?
Yeah.
So let's say I hit new, and I wanted to type in, what's a good artist? Chet Baker. So Chet Baker was a trumpet player. Well, Chet Baker, so it'll pull up Chet Baker Radio, which is provided by Apple, but it'll also pull up other people's stations that they've built through that. And this is all free, keep in mind. And then from there, when I click on that, I can actually listen to a station. It's kind of like Pandora and Spotify, but the cool thing is it learns much faster. So instead of, like Pandora, I've been using it for 6 years, and I cannot tell you how many times I skipped a song from Michael Bublé in my Chet Baker PlayStation, or my playlist, because anybody who knows anything about jazz, Michael Bublé and Chet Baker are like 2 different planets. And so what's cool about this is that, so I can listen to this, I can buy it directly through iTunes if I wanted to, I can get more information from it, anything like that, by tapping the I button up here. I get some more information, but
Where's it free when it's $1.29?
no, to buy it is when the only time it costs, but to listen to it, it's totally free. You're
Well,
not
you
paying.
can buy it if you can listen to it.
Well, in case you know, because the thing about this is it's like a radio station. You can't listen to what you want exactly when you want to. So, for example, if I want to listen to time after time again, I usually have to wait 3 or 4 hours for it to come back around in the playlist. Buying it gives you ownership of that. But if I tap on the I button up here, this is where I can really kind of tailor my station to how I want it. So let's say Miles Davis pops up in the next couple of songs. I can build a station from that artist. I can build a station from that song. So, for example, the Beatles, we mentioned them earlier. That was great because the Beatles, if you know the Beatles, they are very different from when they first started playing music to when they quit. And so if you want to build a station specifically from an early Beatles, you know, if you want to play Let It Be instead of something really early, you'll build a station around that idea. And then you can really tune the station to how you want it. So if you want to play just hits, so Chet Baker, if I just play hits, it's going to pull up Frank Sinatra, it's going to pull up Miles, it's going to pull up a few other people. If I do variety, it's going to give me a little bit of the hits and some of the unknowns. If I do discovery, it's going to be pretty much just people unknown, but that sound kind of like Chet Baker. So it's really cool because, again, you really tailor your station. But then that star button, and we saw this earlier with Control Center, is if I pull that up, I can then say, play more like this, or this is where it really gets better than Pandora and some of those other radio stations online, is that I can say, never play this song again. So, again, like I talked about with Pandora, I cannot tell you how many times I said no to Michael Bublé and my Chet Baker stations. When I hit it here on my Frank Sinatra station, I've never heard Michael Bublé again. Which is fantastic because you think about how many songs it's having to calculate and how many different configurations and all that kind of stuff, and it learns the first time. Or, let's say you don't want to buy it right now, but you may want to later, you can add it to your iTunes wish list. So, right through there, there's tons of powerful.
So do you just listen to it through your phone or through your car? Or
well, here's what's cool. If you have Bluetooth pairing in your car, it'll play through your car.
So you turn Bluetooth back
on for that, yeah. That's the one exception to the Bluetooth rule. Or if you have an auxiliary, like most cars nowadays have the auxiliary port or the direct USB. Like everything Nissan, BMW, Volkswagen has iPod compatibility specifically for iPod. So it'll play this directly through your station with your USB cables through your car. So there's tons of different options. If you have a Bluetooth headset at home, or a dock at home, or a Bluetooth dock at home, or if you have, like what I do, is I have Apple TV at home. So this is kind of what we're doing here. I have Apple TV and I've got a home theater system. So when I'm in the kitchen, I've got my music controller right here, and I can play the music all around my house. Okay, remember, review time. If you're ever in a meeting, you've got music popping up or anything like that, slide up from the bottom, hit the pause button. Every time.
Pause it.
The pause is the one moving. There you go.
The
two vertical lines.
It's not working.
If you're not, so tap on it. So if that doesn't work, Danny, have you ever restarted your phone?
Huh?
Do you ever restart your phone?
I put to hurry up, turn it off, yeah.
Alright, so
You mean turn it off?
last lesson of the day, if your phone doesn't hit pause when you go into Control Center or any other thing, that's a good sign you need to restart your phone. Because in general, if you start seeing apps not do what they're supposed to, your phone's telling you, hey, I need a break.
I did it.
To restart your phone, hold the lock button for about 10 seconds, and this screen will pop up. Slide it, turn it off, and once it's done giving the little spinning dial, you can turn it right back on. But in general, phones are still computers. Definitely want to give them a little bit of a break every once in a while.
Well, I try to do that 2 or 3 times a week, but I guess I haven't done that. I put it in my purse and then I forget it.
Well, I'll tell you, the other thing is you can tell how long it's been since you turned it off by how long it takes to turn it off. Because it's having to close all those apps, and that took a little bit longer than it should have. So definitely make sure you close quit your phone every once in a while, turn it off, and turn it right back on if you want. What I normally do is I'll do it once or twice a week when I get home, just so that I can kind of have a little bit of downtime. I will plug my phone in, turn it off, and then I'll turn it back on. So that's a really good practice.
I'm going to practice by turning that song on and see if it turns on.
Exactly. So like, this is how it should work. If I slide up and I hit play, and I'm in a meeting, I slide this back up, and it immediately stops. That's what should happen. If it doesn't, shut your phone off, and that'll
Throw it out the window.
that'll do a good thing of turning the music off, but it'll also give your phone the needed break that it needs. All right. Does anybody else have any questions or anything before we wrap up today? I know today went a little bit longer, but
Yeah, don't be rushed. You can wait for iOS.
hey. So for those who aren't aware, Bob here has been talking about getting an iPhone for
I keep waiting.
9 months. No. Okay, so he keeps waiting for the price to go down, but we talked about this, last August or something like that? Before the iPhone 5S even came out.
I think 5S.
How much are they now?
They're $199 for the 16 gig. The 32 gig is $299. But as I always say, if you need something now, and you, for example, if it's technology here, there's always going to be something around for it. There's always going to be something that comes out that.
See, I really don't need it. It's going to be strictly a toy.
So you make a question right there. Just buy it. You don't need the new. You don't need the new thing, but you desperately do need a better phone than the one you're currently running.
But I'm cheap.
Just get out of the way.
Well, you have a Volkswagen. How are you cheap?
The last 2 big is I have driven until they would not start. Big engines,
And-
400.
Yeah. But whenever you had a repair, I bet you spent a heck of a lot more than you needed to. Yeah.
You lose real time.
So here's the thing, with iOS 8,
Yeah.
everything you can do with the new phone, you can do with this one.
Oh, yeah.
I mean, I've seen everything there is to see about the new iPhone and iOS 8. There's nothing that iPhone 6 will do with iOS 8 that the 5S or the 5C can't.
Yeah.
The only thing is optical image stabilization, but it doesn't really matter because unless you're taking really action shots and things like that, you're fine.
See, I think I would be taking a lot of photos, but still I don't know how to be.
We took the shots that we have on our website, we took with my phone
Yeah.
because the camera is fantastic. I mean, we take.
That's one of the things I was thinking, 16, you have 32.
Well, iPhones will upgrade to that operating system.
Exactly. Yeah, exactly. That's why I'm telling him not to wait because he keeps wanting to put it off.
Well, see, when I got the iPad, it was iOS 6, I think. We've got 7 on it now, so if I just wait a year.
This is how cool it is. I have an iPad 2, which is a 4-year-old iPad, and I can still get iOS 8. I started out with iOS 4, so I may be missing out on Siri on my iPad because it's so old, but everything else I can do on my iPad.
And what do people do with their phones when they upgrade? Give them away from We've got the two that we just upgraded.
Yeah.
I gave him some friends
Well,
that
that's
have.
their phone, you can do it, you can donate them, I know. to
I just
people.
gave it to.
There's a couple things
everybody.
you can do.
Abused
So,
women,
Apple-
but they'll only put 911 on it.
Yeah. Apple there's a couple options. So Apple now will accept trades. So when I took in my 4S to get the 5S, I took in my 4S and they gave me $180 for it. So I paid $20 and that's it. You can also sell them, you can give them away. Some people keep them for iPod touches basically at that point because it doesn't have cellular, but you can still download apps, you can still download music and use it in your car and things like that. So there's tons of things you can do with an older phone, whether it's an iPhone or not. Well, thanks guys for coming. I knew today was going to be a little bit smaller because, and I kind of like that. It's a little bit more intimate. It's a bit slower paced.
Lined up for next week or is it?
Next, yeah. So we do have everything on the calendar. So we always have our Tech Talks on the calendar. It's if you go to schnurr.com and you click on the events button or calendar button, I'm not sure which it is nowadays, and it'll show you next week we've got going further with the iPhone, and then after that I have to build the schedule for going on. But we're probably going to actually take a break from the advanced to do iOS 8 because I had a lot of people miss it, and because we didn't get to record it, I think a lot of people will benefit from it.
So where do you go watch the recordings on the website?
Yeah, so it's actually on our Facebook, and I don't think it's on. I'll have to talk to Tommy. I don't think it's on our website yet, but we'll definitely get that on there. But right now on Facebook, yeah, if you go to Neighborhood Nerds on Facebook, you'll see all of our little hangout videos and our tech talks. So, well, again, thanks for everybody for stopping by. Hope you enjoyed it.
And thank you.
You're welcome. The Plaid Apron did not close, but they had weird hours.
They really do.